Welcome to the Regeneration Collective podcast, the next UN Visions for a Regenerative Future. I'm Silke von Brockhausen, a UN insider with 18 years across more than a dozen UN missions and founder of the Regeneration Collective. As the UN approaches its 80th anniversary and the campaign for the next Secretary General gets underway, amid protracted conflicts, widening inequalities, and crossed planetary boundaries, we ask, how can the UN become the platform through which people, institutions, and the more than human world repair and transform broken systems and create conditions where life can thrive? In each episode, we speak with regenerative practitioners, policy shapers, indigenous knowledge holders, peace builders, culture makers, and frontline humanitarians about the lived experiences and visions that could translate into regenerative UN policies, organizational culture, and operations. This is for UN staff, partners, member states, and bridge builders who are curious about what regeneration means in practice and who are ready to turn the UN into a trailblazer for this shift. And today, I'm so delighted to welcome two guests. And let me start first with Luise Raaschou. I'm so delighted to welcome one of the true pioneers of regeneration inside the corporate world, Luise Raaschou, Head of Leadership Transformation and Strategy at Mercedes-Benz Vans Europe. Luise is leading a quiet revolution, cultivating regenerative leadership with one of the most traditional and performance-driven industries on the planet. She helps teams move from ego to eco, from control to co-creation, activating collective intelligence and well-being as drivers of excellence. As founder of the European Regenerative Leadership Program, Luise has inspired leaders across industries to reimagine organizations as living systems where purpose, people, and performance thrive in balance. And joining us also is Felix J. Braun, Director of Product Portfolio Management at Mercedes-Benz Vans and one of the key sponsors of this cultural transformation. Over his 2 decades with Mercedes-Benz, Felix has shaped the global van business across Europe, Asia, and Latin America, leading strategy, product, and market innovation. What makes him stand out is his belief that performance and purpose are not opposites. By cultivating trust, collaboration, and long-term vision, he's helping translate regeneration from concept into corporate reality, a leader who is not afraid to lead in new ways in times of turbulence. So welcome, you two. I'm so happy and honored to have you both here.
Thank you, Silke, and
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for the opportunity. It's really an honor to be here and quite exciting, I must say.
So good to have you. You two are among the pioneers bringing regeneration into one of the most traditional industries on the planet, automotive industry, implementing regenerative principles in the vans part of the business. Let's start with our signature question. What does regeneration mean to you personally and in the context of your work at Mercedes-Benz Vans?
You want to start, Luis?
Yes, I can go. It's the hardest question you're starting with because I think there's not one easy answer to that, and I really thought about it for a long time, actually for 2 years, how we can explain what does this actually mean in a short sentence. But I always come back to that it is not possible, even on a personal level, because there are so many fragments and elements in regeneration. But I think what I take away is that there are some very strong principles and practices that are quite easy to understand. But what it means will be very individual from person to person. But in the essence, for me, it's about leaving systems, processes, structures better than we found them, actually.
That's a beautiful intention for any kind of work, right? Felix, do you want to add anything to this definition?
Yes, for sure. So for me, regeneration is like the opposite of exploitation. So personally, that means for me over, a long period of time to be in balance somehow with myself, with my different needs that I have, both on the professional life, but also on the private and family side, family and friends, and also time for myself. So the me time is kind of finding this balance all over the time. And then I'm energized and regenerate having this process. And from a professional perspective, thinking about organizations we are in, I think you can translate this also to, to everyone working in this organization. Every human being has this kind to find the balance. And that also, when Luise said about practices and principles, you can, of course, foster things to become more regenerative. You can take breaks. You need to take time for reflection. You have to do sometimes, also step out and do something completely else for a time being, so that you have these kind of cycles within your, let's say, the work day, within the work week you're in. And these are practices you can actually implement. So then you have the chance to get or to stay in your inner balance.
I love that you're coming from the personal to the bigger one, because I think, we need to be credible by leading the change first within ourselves, and then we can only transform any team or even family community around us. Otherwise, it will never be sustainable. So thanks for pointing that out. And maybe my next question is for Luise, just to get us all more into the process, what happened at Mercedes-Benz Vans in Europe. How did this journey begin, and what inspired you to bring this concept of regenerative leadership into the company, and what was the first spark that made it real?
Yeah, I would say the most important takeaway is that it has really been growing in a very organic way. So it was not just either for me, or I think also for our teams in Denmark and Sweden, where this journey started, or even in the European markets, that it just happened overnight. As you say, there were really a spark. And for me personally, I've been with Mercedes for 23 years, and I always thought it's a great place to work with always a lot of possibilities for development and for learning, and also for getting quite a lot of responsibility if you're willing to take that. So in many ways, I was very, very happy at Mercedes. And I would even say when my journey started, I was at a high point in the classical sense that I had a great team. It was back in 2020. I had a very good boss at that time. It was Felix, when he was still in Denmark and Sweden as the managing director. Our dealers, partners were happy. Even our controlling department was happy. So it was really almost a picture perfect. But in 2020, when we had COVID and we had the whole VUCA environment, we all started to run much faster. And I don't have a problem with that at all. That is also how I worked all of my life. But it was doing the fast. We have to move fast because the world is changing so fast, dealing with very high uncertainty, and still finding that balance between being a human in all of this. So I actually decided, despite that I had my dream job at that time, to say I want to leave the company. But I'm still here because there were really some very brave leaders higher up in our hierarchy that said, okay, and that says a lot about Mercedes Vans as well, that there's really an open mindset to listen. And I was very, very lucky that there were Felix and at that time our head of our European sales and marketing, David Perdomo, who said, okay, let's try at least to understand what it is that is wrong with this woman. Why is she not just happy and continuing? I showed up at that time. I have read the book by Laura Storm and Giles Hodgkins without really understanding, and I could also not speak the language of regeneration, because it is, at least for me, quite complex when you read the book. But somehow we had a meeting. I had a meeting with Felix at that time where I not just showed up to say this is wrong or this is what I think we should change, but more with a plan on how to do it, but really small steps. It was not the big blueprint or 10 steps to this is how we should transform, but it was very much focused on how we show up, how we work together, that I had the feeling that sometimes it was not the competition that was our main competitor. It was also our internal structures that felt too rigid for us to act fast. And that is then how the journey started, and also with a very strong leadership team in Denmark and Sweden, who were also very supportive and co-creating on what then became the prototype. So yes, maybe it was me starting a spark, but we were really a lot of people using the collective intelligence to find out what does this regenerative leadership mean to us. And we then translated it into a program called New Ways of Working.
Wow. Thank you so much for explaining how the whole journey started. And maybe from Felix, as Luise's senior manager and sponsor of this transformation, what convinced you actually to give her this space and to support this transformation inside Mercedes-Benz?
Yeah, as a performance-driven organization, it's very important that you have to understand that, especially in our business, the performance is driven by people. So if you want to be performant, you have to understand what people drives to be performing. And when Luise came to me and said, I'm done, I want to leave the company, I wanted to understand why. Because you don't want to lose your performing people. It resonated quite a bit with me, because at that point in time, we also did an employee survey that was, where we hear into the organization, how are the people feeling within the company. And the results were okay, but at the same time, you could see that, we lacked, people that were really ignited of what we are doing. And having people like Luise at hand, who is so ignited, I said, let's discuss this with the leadership team. And then we came up, and Luise brought in a lot of ideas, and we discussed this in the leadership team. And at the end, the conviction came out of the feeling, because we all had a lot of energy discussing it. So we started with ourselves, actually, and it gave me energy, it gave the whole group energy, and there the conviction came.
Beautiful. So it shows that the person who has the idea or had this energy, and then you also at the same time need a frame around it, or you need to have the senior management to provide the space and the soil where these ideas can actually take seeds. And it seems like you two were the perfect match for making this happen at both levels. But maybe just for listeners to get a clearer idea of how this actually looks like, what we are talking about, this new way of working. Luise, maybe you can paint us a picture of how it looks like, how it feels like now in Mercedes-Benz after this transformation.
Yeah. What I'm really proud of is that it really started bottom up, with asking the people, what do you need, what works for you. We tested a lot in our leadership team in Denmark and Sweden, and there are so many elements in regenerative leadership, and there are some elements that speak more to some than others, which is the beauty of this, that it's really not one fits all. But what we did and how we also scaled it up a little bit, because we are around 100 people in Denmark and Sweden in the Vans organization. But we also, we said, okay, it should not be a closed party. If you have something good to share, we are always fan of best practices. We shared it also with the managing directors first in the other markets. But it is very much about it was about inviting people in. In the beginning, they thought, are we now going to hug trees? Because it was still, for me, the language of explaining what is this concept, because it's also a lot on your inner journey, your inner systems, how you show up, not just what you do, but how you are as a person, what mindset you have, right? So, but I really think that through dialogue and giving input and a lot of good discussions where it was really about listening, also something that we practice quite a lot in New Ways of Working, that it's not always just the talking, but really listening to the people that would be affected of this if they wanted to enter this New Ways of Working program, as we named it. We slowly build it up and co-created and weave together different bits also from the other markets. And we created ambassador teams, because we also said, again, the ownership is not that this is going to be centrally steered, even though we are a very strong core team. but we asked also the other markets to nominate ambassadors that then came together. And we ended up with 4 pillars that we are now working on, which is our translation of regenerative leadership or transformation leadership, which is about mindset that builds on the regenerative principles. It's the mindset. It is about how do we activate the collective intelligence. And again, this is linked to efficiency, capacity, getting more creativity into our problem solving. Then it is organisms and some of the principles that we know from agility and Scrum and sociocracy. But again, not just these mechanical parts of now we have to do some sprints. We do it in a regenerative way. And then how do we act as an ecosystem? That is the 4th component.
Mm.
It's really like a buffet that some markets are doing more organisms, others are more on the mindset. It depends on the maturity level of where you are as a person and as a team.
Thank you for painting this picture. It sounds to me it's a lot about working more decentralized and having more interactions with each other, and working also across teams better together, having more trust across different departments. Felix, do you want to add anything? How does the new Mercedes-Benz feel like when you maybe visit your old offices? What's different now?
No, I mean, I think the transformation that we have gone through in Sweden, Denmark, firstly, but also notice it, of course, now in the other European markets, is that there is a more openness, you see more happy faces. You feel that you don't only look on agendas and then do A, B, C, D, but you are listening more, you're more open and conceptive, actually, and that leads automatically to a better, workshop or whatever you're about to do in the office time. So yeah, you can clearly see the difference and feel the difference. It's both just noticing it by what's coming out of it. It's more creative usually. It's more let's say idea solution decision that adds from different angles. It's not decided let's end by the hierarchy in the room. It's more a co-creation. And you leave with more energy usually than you start off with, and that is always a good indicator actually. If you lose a lot of energy throughout the day, that is something actually where you have to think about why is that the case.
I
And
love
vice
this
versa.
description. Mercedes-Benz now sounds like a place you really want to spend those working hours and engage with purpose, right? And not just to earn your salaries. I think very it's something we really want to work towards and achieve also in a UN setting. But before we get to that point, I feel like it does sound beautiful, but I'm sure it was not an easy journey to get there. And it's now about 4 to 5 years you have been on this journey. So maybe, Luise, you can tell us a little bit about challenges on a structural level or also personally that you might have to overcome during this time.
Yeah. I mean, that there have been many situations, but every time that I've had fears or that I had worried, it always ended up as surprising me positively after. Because even though, of course, there has been doubts and resistance, what is that? But I would say in general, without painting this picture perfect, but the people at Mercedes Vans, they are super professional. They're also very committed. Once they have really understood something, then they will both run like hell, but they will also support a lot. And I think that it's about when I've been standing in front of the managing directors to explain what is now this regenerative leadership about or new ways of working. In general, I think people have seen that there is a need for changing. So it was always a very open environment. They're still challenging, and this is the beauty of how we are running regenerative leadership in Mercedes Vans, because we said it's voluntarily. We don't want to force anyone on the train. It will not work anyways. And honestly, there are people who are not going to get on this regenerative leadership train, new ways of working, because it's just not for them. And that's okay, because again, it's not a one fits all. And there's also a strength, in having that diversity in a company. You need both some that are still maintaining a status quo in some part of the business, others that are driving development, and we can also drive growth in different ways. And I think that is very important to remember. And one of the biggest challenges is, of course, because it's a German engineer company. So, of course, the first thing they told me and Felix was, where's the Excel sheet? How do we measure this? And that is one of the hardest things with regenerative leadership. How do we measure? Because only when we see the numbers, then we are fully convinced usually. Here, I think also there's been the trust to say, okay, let's try it. We have a lot of qualitative data that backs it up, but we have also been able to measure qualitative and quantitative about speed of ideas, about employee engagement, of course, as Felix said, but also just as people turning up to do things that they are not asked to do, despite them being super busy and having many things on their plate, but that they still want to be a part of this. I mean, that shows that it's working in terms of energy, engagement, excitement. And yeah, there are many more KPIs that we are tracking, and that has been necessary both to talk to the head and the heart in this. Yeah.
Thanks so much for this transition, because what you described, that Mercedes-Benz is a large, complex, tradition-rich system with quite strong hierarchies, right? It reminds me a lot of my working environment in the UN for the last almost 20 years. So maybe, Felix, you can hopefully give us some lessons learned from your journey of transformation that could inspire UN staff or leaders, and maybe also from the challenges you have learned on how to provide this enabling environment to make the regeneration happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to think about the company you're working in, not only as a company, but as a living system somehow, as an ecosystem, if you want to say it like this, where you have people, and that the UN, I mean, is a perfect example of having a rich cultural organization all over the world, where you can embrace so much and you can learn so much from others. So I think to understand that whatever you're in what role and place, it's all interconnected at the end of the day in an organism, in a living system. So you are interrelated to the whole organization. You're part of something bigger, and that, if you understand this, you can talk to your colleagues, to your peers, and of course you might need maybe somebody, kind of a sponsor, a protector, a space holder, however you call it, that allows, of course, to then do different practices and things. But from this as a basis, I think it can create a momentum and grow. And it's something that, of course, also where you have to have always a challenge. Maybe it takes time because it's nothing you can say only as a kind of order. Now feel like you're in an ecosystem. That doesn't work. You have to feel it. You have to experience it. You have to convince actually the whole organization at the end of the day. And that is just something where I only can say you have to have some patience as well. And I know Luise, for example, is not very patient. So I had to slow it sometimes a little down from expectation management. But it grows. So yeah.
A beautiful advice, and also just that perspective that everything is connected, and maybe also highlighting that to your staff at every team meeting, right? Like, what you do matters. It gives people a total different drive to what they're doing if they always remember that they're actually part of something alive that matters. So maybe also Luise, if you would meet a UN staff in the same kind of position like you, who is eager to start the change, maybe from the bottom up, do you have any advice on how this person can start to bring regeneration to life?
I mean, one thing is clear from my perspective. It really takes a lot of courage in the beginning. But I can promise you that right on the other side of the fear, there's usually a big positive feedback. And there's been a lot of times where this courage has been activated, not just for me, but I think also for a lot of the leaders who said, okay, let's try it now. Let's stand for this. So courage for me is and it sounds very generic, but I would also say, and maybe this is now not so political, but do it anyways or find another way, because there will be resistance and you have to listen to that, listen into that, but don't let that knock you out, because where there's will, there's a way. And I think no one can deny that the purpose of making people thrive while we are high performing is the wrong thing to do where we are at the moment in the company. So we can do it together, and we need each other, and you need a tribe. I mean, I've had some really strong people supporting me in this, both inside and outside of the organization. Don't do it alone, because then you will get tired very fast.
I love this courage, persistence, and collaboration, if I may summarize that. Felix, from your leadership perspective, what does it take to sponsor this kind of change? What mindsets and leadership qualities do you feel are essential also for UN senior managers to enable regeneration?
Mm. Yeah, of course, I support what Luise said. When of course you have to be courageous in a one way. You have to be open to try out something new. And but then again, it's not so difficult if you feel what's happening in the organization, if you do so. So yeah, from a leadership perspective, I would say yes, you have to start within yourself. You have to have a team around you, or supporters, or colleagues that are joining you in the journey. And you have, of course, then really look into the specific ecosystem you're in. So it's about the purpose that you bring into the organization, the purpose that you have as a leadership team. You have to build a kind of, what are you standing for? What is your legacy? That is a process, and that process leads to a lot of trust in your environment, because you cannot do this only with yourself. So this is also a joint process. And after that, you have the trust to let loose of control. You can you then, with the trust, you empower and open the space for people working in the organization to also become part of the journey, and maybe feel part of it, and not being told to, but because you have the choice always, if you like or not, to join this journey, but you feel the openness for it. So people are willing to give it a try much more easily, as if that would be something you're forced to do, or you kind of command and control it.
Wow, I think you two just gave a complete summary of the essential qualities for leading regeneratively yourself, teams, and organization. Thank you for this. And I think earlier Luise mentioned the VUCA context we are in, this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of our world right now. The UN is playing a huge role around rebuilding countries after disaster and conflict. And I feel what you described earlier, how Mercedes-Benz has experienced pressure, and it has been a stressful environment, which I can totally relate to, responding to emergencies also in various countries in disaster and after conflict. So do you have any advice also on how to stay grounded and calm and still bring this kind of leadership into times of crisis.
Joining ground in a place where crisis happened, I think needs a couple of things. Of course, it's just something that is very challenging for everyone personally. So be aware of yourself, reflect on yourself, give yourself your attention to yourself as well. Give the patience for being aware that you don't only rebuild structures again afterwards, but also that there is a healing process necessary for the environment of the people being affected by the crisis. So give it patience, listen. Listening qualities are very important, but also listen to yourself. And then it will take some time. It's not about only rebuilding structures.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Luise, anything you want to add on this point?
I think it actually takes a lot of vulnerability, sometimes to just like the cyclical element in regenerative leadership, that you actually dare to also feel and allow yourself, because no one is the man of steel or the woman of steel, that it's okay to be human. And sometimes you need to go through that little bit of a breakdown to get into renewal, to get into getting the new ideas, and let old ways die within yourself of things you did not think was possible. And that's a process I also work with in this transformation with myself. One day you're running to the left, and then we have to run to the right, and it's quite tough being a human in this uncertainty and being vulnerable. And as we do quite concrete, we have some toolboxes for collective intelligence, for well-being, is that we quite concretely we check in meetings, from just a human perspective. How are you today, on a scale from 1 to 5? And also, what do we take away from this meeting with one word? I think that we also bring a little bit in of who we are in our personal life. That makes me stay centered, grounded, connected in all of this, because I know the rest of the people I'm in, they also just feel like this. We're not machines, and that makes me keep my sanity at times. Yeah.
Beautiful. I think that's also so key, because it feels like we're in a continuous crisis all the time. And these qualities are so important: the vulnerability, compassion, and kindness and relatability that you two bring across. This transformation that you have achieved, it's really incredible. And yet you're still you're so down to earth and grounded. And I can also sense this joy that both of you have in bringing this process alive. And I feel like this is really inspiring for anybody who tries to achieve it. It's not about pushing and being impatient and taking this forward with force, but with this humbleness and flowing with it. But we're running out of time, unfortunately, because I could listen to your stories for a way longer time. But I have one important last question, if I may, which I ask all of my guests, is if you were actually the UN Secretary General in 2027, that's now being running for election. How would you make the UN itself regenerative in the way it leads, decides, and serves the world? Do you have any kind of action plan for the first 100 days or so? Over to whoever wants to start.
This time it's Luise.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Felix. No, I would reach out, and now you just said that me and Felix are so humble, but what I lacked, I think what Mercedes-Benz lacked in the beginning, was actually to look to other, at least big corporate traditionals who had gone through the same transformation, or at least started working with this, because there's always a lot to learn from others. So I would call Felix and ask him how he started this journey.
You know that.
Yeah. No, but also I think we have talked a lot about being it and the inner process. I would really hope that he or she would experience first and foremost what regenerative leadership is, not just from a head perspective, but really go out like what we did with our leadership team, spend some days outside in nature and experience what regenerative leadership is all about, because then you get the whole picture. I think you cannot just do regenerative leadership from the head. You have to try it before it really makes sense and resonates fully. What
Understand it and embody it. This is so key. I hear you, and it gets back to what we talked about earlier, this credibility that you also have to walk the talk. Felix, what would you do as Secretary General?
Yes, of course, I would kind of, understand the let's call it maybe internal situation or the UN is right now. So how is the connection between the people in the organization? How are the interrelations? What's the awareness level, so to say, from the organization, for the people in the organization as such? That is the one ecosystem that is, of course, important to get let's say this kind of understanding and being part of the ecosystem of the UN. But everyone in the UN is also part of a cultural background coming from a home country, where you have also to incorporate everything that is coming from the leaders around the countries and the cultures. So it's also understanding this and incorporate it, because at the end of the day, it's one place to be, and you have to convince leaders around the world to avoid getting in too many crises, right? That's healing is always necessary and important to be able to do that, but preventing is even the better way to go. So I think it's about the interrelations at the end of the day between the inner ecosystem and the cultural surroundings and leaders in the countries, and yeah, to focus on that and to foster that would be my recommendation.
Beautiful. Starting with the staff as ambassadors in their own countries, or as people who bring in also this culture. And then I love this, that regeneration could be actually prevention of more crisis. And that's what we really also look for at the UN, to not be the firefighters in the end when something happens, but to create this environment where the planet and people can thrive and not be in constant crisis. So thank you so much for this beautiful ending. For people who are curious to follow your journey and learn more about this regenerative shift at Mercedes-Benz, where can they find you, or where can they learn more about you?
Yeah, we thought about what should our answer be to this one. But honestly, I think to find us on LinkedIn, reach out if we can share something without having a final blueprint either. But always happy to share if we can help via LinkedIn or wherever.
Thanks so much. Any last words from Felix before we close? Or
It was a great conversation, Silke. Thank you for your curiosity, and thanks, Luise, for being part of that journey.
Yeah, thank you all. It was a really nice experience. And yeah, I really hope it will give some inspiration and hope and courage. I'm sure that there's a tipping point for the world. And I think the last words should be, I'm just happy I could tell my kid that at least I did something where I was. And I think that is what it should come back to for all of us, that we are doing something with what we have where we are in whatever situation. So yeah, thank you.
so inspiring. Thank you both, and I wish you all the best for the continuation of this journey.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.